Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Our Golden 20s. My name is Sadie, and I'm joined with my co-host, Teagan, and we are excited for today's episode. We're going to be talking all about going on a first date, you know, those first date nerves and just like getting ready for a first date, what to like do on a first date, those sorts of things. And then we're also going to talk about finding independence in a relationship. So if you're someone who's not currently dating because you're in a relationship, then this episode is still for you. So we will get to all of that in just a minute, but let's start with a Tuesday tip. Tag, do you want to go first?
Sure. So full disclosure, I'm stealing this tip from a user on TikTok, but when I came across it, I saved it instantly and was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I have to talk about this on the podcast. So This was from the user, I'm going to butcher this, so I'm sorry, at Niche Lizette on TikTok. But she did a video that was basically about like little ways that she makes her life magical or something like that. And she had like a bunch of really good examples. But the one that stuck out to me was when you're traveling, pick one thing that you try in every city you visit so that one day you can be an expert on which places have the best blank. And I am like obsessed with this. So it would be like every city you go to, you know, you order a slice of cake for dessert and then you will know which city out of all the places you've traveled has the best cake. Like, I just love that. And it could be for anything. Like every bar you go to, you get an espresso martini or you get oysters or whatever. So I just thought like maybe as people are starting to venture out and travel a little more, even like local travels, like how cool would it be for you to know like where in your city has the best whatever or I don't know. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, that's very fun. And it's so true. Like I wouldn't say I'm an expert on anything, but anytime I can give people a recommendation for where they're traveling to, I just feel so like, girl, look at you. You are so well traveled. You know what I mean? Never mind being like an expert. So I feel like that would just take it up a notch. And also, like you said, in your own city, like I probably can't tell you the best anything in Toronto because I don't know, I always change things up or I don't know. It's just not the expert level that this tip could get you to. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I have like a friend in Toronto who she runs an Eggs Benedict themed Instagram. And so every time she goes out for breakfast, she gets Eggs Benedict and then like rates it. I'm like, that's so cool. So now if you're like, what's the best Eggs Benedict in Toronto? She would know.
Yeah. I feel we could have a whole podcast episode just on that. Maybe that's because I'm a huge Eggs Benny fan. Yeah. Oh, man. I love that so much. That's such a good tip.
So what is your tip?
My tip is a little maybe less fun, but very important. So just this week, I got my voter ballot in the mail and wanted just to put that on everyone's radar that the federal election is happening on Monday, September 20th here in Canada. And I just wanted to use my Tuesday tip to remind you guys to vote. I feel like all of our listeners probably are over the age of 18, which means you are eligible to vote. You just need to make sure you're registered, especially if you've moved away for school or something. Just like check where you're registered. And if you're registered back home, like, you know, try and figure that out so you can get in and actually vote and have it count. The other thing I wanted to say on this, I'm not going to talk too much politics. Don't worry. I'm not going to force my political views on anybody. But I just want to say, like, to educate yourself as well. This is something that I am actually kind of poor at doing. But anytime an election does come around, I like to, you know, just like Google the political parties that are running and the leaders and whatnot and actually read about their platforms. There's so many websites and like news websites too that like break down like key points of everybody's platform and then just kind of vote based off that and what is important to you, what stands out to you. I kind of felt when I first started voting, I think I've only voted twice but because I don't remember how often. Is it every 4 years? Oh
Yeah,
gosh, this is
I want to say we've only been able to vote for one federal election,
okay.
I
That
think.
might be true.
But we had a
Okay.
provincial one, I
Yes.
think.
Okay.
My
Yeah,
memory's
I've definitely
terrible.
voted twice. I just don't
Yeah.
remember if they were federal or what. But I have made the mistake, I guess, or I feel it's normal to just like vote for whoever your parents vote for the first
Right.
time you
Yeah.
vote, or vote for whoever your sisters or your brother vote for. And I think that's, maybe fine, but doing your own research really gives you power to vote for the person who is going to, push for the things that are important to you. So my
Mm-hmm.
parents, for instance, they don't care what the government's going to do for students, where my sister, who's still in school, that's the number one thing she looks at, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like if I ever want to afford a house one day, like maybe that's what I'm looking at. Or,
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very personal what is important to you in your political leader. So make sure you're doing that research and making an educated vote based
Mm-hmm.
on your values and the party that closely aligns to it.
Yeah, and there's so many resources out there. Like I know in Canada, you can do like a CBC based poll thing where they ask you questions like, how important is this to you? How do you feel about pipelines? How do you feel about so and so treating the COVID vaccine like this? And you just answer all these questions and you can weigh what's more important to you. And it shows you on a 3D kind of chart who you most closely align to. And because it
Yeah.
can be tough, some of the parties can be like very similar. So then once you start weighting, like the response to COVID's more important to me than, say, housing or whatever, it can
Yeah.
give you like really personalized results, which I think can also help, especially if you're like, I don't even know what half of this means. Like, I don't know what's going
Yeah.
on. It's good to just like
Yeah.
do one of these quizzes because you can answer for most of the questions like, I don't know or I don't care. And it takes
Yeah.
it all into consideration. But yeah,
Yeah. That's totally
voting's
a great place
super
to start.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a privilege, not a right. That's what I've been taught.
Yes. Yeah.
So you should use and
100%.
abuse your privilege because, I mean, think of how, there are so many voters that are suppressed, especially we see it in the news with the US. Like that is how important your voice and your vote is that,
Yeah.
people in power are trying to stop you from voting. And so, and it's the same here in Canada. I think certain people want it to seem like it's easy or they want it to seem like your vote doesn't matter, but it definitely does and is so important.
Yeah, and that's it too. Like I always find around the US presidential elections, like it's always such a big deal. It's all I see on my social media,
Yeah.
like celebrities are just like extremely vocal about it, and there's like voting campaigns happening among just the general public. And in Canada, like it really doesn't get that same hype. And
Yeah.
I think as a Canadian, it almost feels like the American like elections are more important. But as Canadians, like we obviously don't really have a say in it unless you are also like an American citizen as well. So it's just like put that passion, put that importance in your own government because that's where you have a say. So you definitely want to, like you're saying, use that privilege for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we can transition off of the, lecture to go vote. And we can turn this into some girl chat about going on a first date. I feel like, right? I feel like this sums up our Golden 20s podcast in a nutshell. Like this whole podcast is because, like there's so many different interests and like things we have to do in our 20s. So it's like we have to date and find our soulmate. We need to vote. We need to work. We need to clean our house, whatever. So this is just one spectrum to the other, all in this one episode.
Yeah, it does sum us up pretty well, though.
Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to maybe start by just like, maybe just chatting through, like, first of all, I feel society's a little bit more social these days. Obviously, the
Mm-hmm.
Delta variant is very real and COVID numbers are going up again, and it's quite scary. But I feel like people are obviously vaccinated now and
Mm-hmm.
more used to following the rules, I guess, so they can socialize a little bit more safely. So I think dating is kind of on the upswing again, and
Mm-hmm.
dating in real life. Like I know during peak lockdown or peak COVID slash lockdown last year, it was a lot of like virtual dating, which don't get me wrong was a lot of fun, but it just hits different when you can meet in person.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to also just mention a few like good ways to meet people, because I think that can be how this all starts, and it can also be extremely intimidating being like, okay, I'm feeling ready to date, but it's really hard to meet people. So obviously number one I would say is dating apps. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
convenient, you literally are serve so many different people in a day, and you can have different apps and see even different people. So that is, I feel, the most common way to date and like meet people these days as like a millennial Gen Z dater. But my favorite way to meet people is through mutual friends, or
Mm-hmm.
going to maybe not group events right now, since, we are still being responsible citizens, but, hanging out with a group of people and meeting mutual friends that way, I think that can be really great. Or just even asking your friends, I'm like getting serious about dating. I'm honestly looking for somebody. Do you have anybody to set me up with? And I don't know. I think that's just like fun, but like having like a mutual friend kind of thing and something to like bond over with this person when you do eventually go on a date. But those I think would be the most common ways to meet people.
Yeah.
Also going like, I think we've maybe talked about this. Sorry, I feel like I've been ranting already. Maybe I should take a breath.
Very passionate.
I'll take a breath. Let me take a breath. You go ahead, Tig.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like we've talked about in the past, like meeting people through your work, which can kind of be weird. Like you kind of have to decide if that's something that you really want, like what happens if it goes wrong. But like meeting people through, like if you're in school, that's how I met my husband. Especially
Yeah.
like if you're doing activities, like if you are in the same, workout class or whatever, obviously don't be creepy and be like, damn, you look so good working out. But, something that shows you have
Damn,
similar
those
interests.
shorts look good on you.
Yeah. I think it might work better as like coming from a woman than like a man being like, damn, look at you work out.
Yeah.
That would be weird. But,
Yeah.
having something in common obviously already helps kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah, 100%. And it just, like I said, gives you something to like bond over right away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely, a great way to organically meet people outside of dating apps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think once you do meet somebody that you're really into, if it's in person and then you start texting, or if it's somebody you met on a dating app, I feel like as women, we kind of just like wait for guys to ask us out and wait for them to make the first move. And then you start like going crazy when they're not making the first move. Like you're either like, why isn't he? Is he not as into it? And our minds just start to spiral. So I just want to say, ask that person out. Like, try to work up the courage and be confident and just make that first move yourself. Otherwise, you're going to absolutely drive yourself crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. It's been a while since I've had my last first date. I think it's been 7 or 8 years on the 11th of September. But I think, for first dates, it's normal to be nervous about it or to feel, kind of weird about it. Like you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be ready to like embrace the potentially awkward situation, like go with an open mind and hope for the best. But, have the understanding that maybe it won't work out because, lots of people go on lots of dates all the time and they can't all be good.
Exactly. And I feel like I'm definitely an anxious dater, like leading up to a date. Like I'm often very nervous and like very anxious about it. But as soon as I'm there, I'm totally fine. And I'm like, girl, you're so good at dating. Like you should do this more. But still, every time then, like before my next date, I still also get extremely nervous. So I think, like you're saying, Tag, first of all, just not putting pressure on yourself. And this is the other thing too. Like I always tell at least one of my friends where I'm going on that date because obviously safety is important. But I try not to like tell too many people or hype it up too much because especially me, like who is a little picky, I guess, with who I go on dates with, and I don't go on tons and tons of dates. I feel like sometimes I'll tell even like my sister and she'll be like, ooh, so exciting, let me know how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, then you feel just like, I don't know, pressure that it should have gone better or something like that. So I feel like it's okay to just kind of, like I said, tell people where you're going, but try not to get your hopes up or don't put pressure on yourself because it's totally normal, for these dates to be awkward, for the first date especially to not be the best date in the world. Like, we're not on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, you know what I mean? So, yeah, totally normal.
Yeah, I like the idea of keeping it, like, low-key. Because let's say, like, you don't want to date, but then you found a great connection as a friend, or, like, this is me being such a nerd, but, like, you're a freelancer and then you found someone who's in the same workspace and they're like, listen, I don't know that we should date, but if I need a graphic designer, I'll call you up or something. You know what I mean? Like if you keep it simple and it's not like tonight is the night where I meet my husband or I meet my wife, like, and it's just a chance to like go out in the city, try something new, meet someone new, get out of your house, get dressed up. Yeah. Like I think through that headspace might make it even like less stressful even.
Yeah. And I think that'll come across on how you act on your date too. You know, like if you're desperate for it to work out, like there's a high chance that that guy picks up on it and it kind of scares him away or whoever you're dating. So I feel like if you just go into it being like casual, then if it works out, great. You know, if you go on a second date and you start to get super into them, like great. But yeah, you definitely don't need to put all that pressure on the first date. And kind of on that note too, like your first date doesn't have to like determine if this is the person you're going to marry or not. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like a way to, first of all, meet somebody in person if you have met them on a dating app, just to see if you actually jive well in person, but just to see if you're compatible, you know, if you have a lot of things in common or not, if you balance each other out in good ways or not, if conversation flows easily or not. Like those are the sorts of things you need to take away, or you probably will take away from a first date. Not so much, you know, all of their, I don't know, like lifelong goals and like, you know, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah. And I think also like you should trust your gut, as simple as like, I don't know, I don't think we're well suited. And like as crazy as like this guy does not feel safe, I should probably not be hanging out with him. Yeah. Like I know like in the My Favorite Murder podcast, they say like fuck politeness. If you get weird vibes from someone, be like, okay, it's not working out, gotta go. Yeah. And yeah, like always tell someone where you're going. I have location turned on my phone, and then you can share that like with your friend or with your mom or whoever. Because yeah, you're like going out, putting yourself in a vulnerable space like emotionally, but you know, also like you're going out with a random stranger. So, you know, pick a public space and trust your gut. Yeah, that was my mom talk. Podcast.
I love that. Yeah, I love it.
Reminder.
I think, going back to the whole like being nervous ahead of time, I think something that's really helped me and all of the YouTubers that I watch is kind of having some sort of like pre-date routine in place and using that time. First of all, giving yourself a lot of time to like get ready and like get in the headspace. So you're not like rushing out the door and like projecting, you know, you're like rush onto this person, but taking time for yourself ahead of time and just like hyping yourself the F up as whatever like that means to you. For me, I'm usually like blasting music, and it's like, you know, a hype up playlist, like Destiny's Child, you know the vibes. And then doing my makeup, picking my outfit, having a drink maybe, depending on what time of day this date is at or what we're doing. And I find that helps me so much. Some of the YouTubers I watch, they're like, my pre-date routine is to watch Sex in the City, or one girl just calls her friend because her friend hypes her up rather than like listening to music and stuff. So I think just like setting time aside for yourself so you can like hype yourself up, you kind of, and also just like make sure you're, you know, wearing something you're comfortable in because you have time to put thought into your outfit and you're comfortable with just, I don't want to make it sound like it's all appearance focused, but like you're comfortable with your look, you know, in the right headspace. Taking that time, I think, goes a really far way.
Yeah. Well, it's less things to stress about too. Like it's like we were talking about for job interviews. Like if you're not having to worry about, does this outfit look okay? You can just focus on like being yourself and presenting yourself as best you can.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And then when you show up, you're just like confident, you know, because all those little decisions are like, you're good with them. You put thought into them. You did your best. And now you can just like rock it kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think too, the more kind of confident you are on a date, kind of the more easier conversation flows as well. Like for me, I feel like I'm never relying on the other person to just like guide a whole conversation. And this might be extremely nerdy, but I always have like go-to questions for every date I go on in case there's a lull in conversation. Like I think, like we said, awkwardness is totally normal. But the more like open, kind of like I guess confident you are in yourself, the more open you are to like talk, then that person you're on a date with also becomes more open and like comfortable to talk to. So I think just like having some like fun, quirky questions to get to know somebody in your back pocket is maybe a nerdy idea, but it's helped me so many times, like more times than I can count.
Yeah. And I like the idea of being like your true self. Like there's no point in lying about who you are on the first date because you're like not setting yourself up for success in this relationship.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like obviously, you know, if you have embarrassing things about yourself, you don't have to share them on the first date. You don't have to
put it all out there.
Yeah. But being like, don't stress about coming across as weird or that you don't want them to know like X, Y, and Z about you. Just focus on like being yourself, and you know that's how you find people who are really compatible with you, I think.
Yeah, 100%. One of the fun questions I always ask my date is, if you were a fictional character from a TV show or movie or book, who would you be? And I always find that so fascinating. Sometimes I don't know the people they say, like, because I'm not a huge pop culture person.
This is a bad question.
So in that case, yeah, it's not always the best. But I feel like a lot of people just have, like, common answers where even if I don't know the characters super well, like, I know enough about them kind of thing.
Yeah.
To, like, grasp it. But I feel like it's such a good way. And, like, it's a fun question. But it's also, like, a good way to, like, get to know somebody because it's, like, I've had in a few instances where I'm like, I didn't see it, but now that you said it, I totally see it and I totally understand your vibe way more. Like, I don't know. It's a fun one.
Yeah, I love asking people what their favorite scent is because I feel like they like tell a whole story. Like it's like, I love the smell of pine trees because my grandpa used to camp with me. Like it like unravels this whole deep emotional spiral within themselves.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to try that one. I love that. I feel like scent is like tied to emotion, I think. So that makes like a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And I think too, if you're somebody who like you've gone on a few dates and you're like, no, I just like really freeze up. I don't know what to talk about. I always find conversations really dull and kind of awkward. Then I 10 out of 10 recommend you go on an activity date and you actually do something rather than just going for dinner or drinks. And by activity date, I mean like you're actually doing something. So it could be, I don't even know now. I should have like put some examples in here. What are some examples of an activity?
I know some people bring people to like board game cafes. Like we used to have one in Toronto, like Snakes and Lattes or Snakes and Loggers, where it's like a bar, but then you get board games.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's one.
That's like the perfect example. Yeah, I think that's a good one. It could also be like taking, this is going to sound really nerdy, but like taking some sort of class together. I feel like I'm somebody who like loves to cook, and maybe this isn't really a first date thing, but cooking like dinner together is, I think, a lot of fun. And it could be like going to a class and like doing that together, or even like inviting someone over to your apartment. Again, I don't think that's a first date thing, but like, you know, making dinner. So, you know, it just kind of guides your conversation because you can talk about what you're making or something like that rather than like trying to get to know this person with like small talk, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple bars in Toronto like where you can play like bocce ball inside, where they have like arcade games inside.
Yeah.
Or, you know, something like that you can still get a drink and chat, but then there's always something that's kind of a backup for the conversation.
Yeah.
Like if you run out of things to say, you'd be like, wow, you're really good at bocce ball or whatever.
I think that's such a good idea. Like the Rec Room or Duke's Refresher downtown, like they all have games. You can like go bowling, and like maybe these sound lame when you suggest it to your date or they suggest it to you. But in my experience, it's honestly such like a game changer. And it just like, I don't know, makes it more enjoyable because like you were saying too, Tag, I always view going on dates as like getting to explore somewhere new in the city and having a good experience with somebody new. And it's like, there's no harm in doing that ever. You know what I mean? Like, if it doesn't work out to be romantic and like your future boyfriend or girlfriend, like at least you had like a really fun night doing something you wouldn't have otherwise done.
One thing that I think is actually not a good first date, which might be controversial, is going to the movies. Because I think like you just sit there kind of in silence beside the other person. And then it's like if it's a bad movie, then it's just like a bad 2 hours where you're sitting beside a stranger. Like, I don't know. Yeah. That's just me. But
yeah, no, I feel agree like with that. Or like a yoga class where like you can't talk to that person, you know? I totally agree. Yeah. I feel like you could maybe like go for the movie and then like grab a drink after, but then it's like, how long does this date need to last? You know what I mean? Like, then you can talk about the movie after if you grab a drink. But then again, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, just the longest date in the world. Yeah. It would be worse if it was like dinner than a movie, because if the dinner went bad, you then have to sit like for 2 hours beside the person. I don't know.
Even just like dinner for a first date. Like, I think that's kind of normal, but honestly, no pressure to even do dinner. Like, just grab drinks with somebody if you just want to like chat, because that doesn't tie you in. You know, you can have one drink or you can have four. Like, it doesn't tie you into a long time, especially if the date isn't going well. And if you do grab drinks and it's going super well and you want it to last longer, then it's like go for a walk after or something to like spend more time together without forcing it or being obligated to stay with them for like X amount of time.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Tag, so let's talk all about being in a relationship. And I say, let's talk about it, even though I've never been in a serious relationship. And I might not have much to contribute except for like things that happen in my head with no like scientific proof of this, but I'm down to chat it out.
So one thing that I think is very important to anyone in a relationship is still having the ability to be your own person and have your own kind of independence. And I think like right off the top, if you're in a relationship with someone who does not want you to be your own person and have independence, that's a huge, huge red flag. Most people, if they're nice, they want you to, you know, spend time on your own or spend time with your friends, doing the things that you enjoy. Don't always need to be there. And it goes the other way. Like you are going to probably lose a bunch of friends if all you want to do is hang out with your significant other. And it's good to healthy to have your own kind of personality and space, I think.
I always think of a relationship, at least this is what I'm holding out for, is somebody who doesn't like complete my life, you know, because I think that's like they're filling a hole where it's like you need to kind of be complete on your own, and this person just adds to what you have going on. So I think, and obviously this might change once I meet somebody, and Tag, let me know if this is how it kind of worked for you, but I think it's easy when you first meet somebody and you start, you know, seriously dating and decide to like be exclusive or whatever, then it's easy to get really caught up in that and be with that person 24/7, and like that's totally fine. But I think it's having the self-awareness to kind of do a gut check and be like, do I miss, you know, my alone time? Or like, is this healthy to be spending so much time with this person? Am I losing my friends? Like, have I kind of lost who I was before my relationship? And just kind of do like a little gut check and like self-scan, I guess, to be like, you know, how do I go from here? Because I think it is a big balancing act of being independent and being a good partner, but there definitely is a way to do both.
Yeah, I think that basically you should not be changing who you are or the things that you like to do to be with someone. I think the best relationships are kind of built when you are dating someone who enjoys a lot of the same things that you do. And so that's why, like, you should just continue to do the things that you enjoy that are important to you, because if you're dating someone, it's highly likely that they would probably also enjoy these things if you have, you know, similar interests outside of it. But even if they don't, you should still continue to do the things that you enjoy. Because who knows, maybe like I like doing yoga, and I once tried to get my husband to do yoga with me at home, and it was like the biggest fail in the world. But it's not like I'm like, okay, I guess I can't do yoga anymore. You know, it's just like, okay, this is not a thing we do as a couple. It's a thing I do as myself, and
on your own.
That's totally fine. And there are things that he does that I have no interest in doing, and that's totally normal. And if you find that you're in a relationship where you feel like you don't have your own kind of like time or space away, like pick hobbies that are one person activities. Like I do calligraphy. It's like you can't do calligraphy as a 2-person group unless you're like both doing it just sat beside each other. Or if it's like you do a certain type of workout that you know your partner doesn't like, or whatever it is that gives you time away and space to be on your own. Because even like if you're with the other person all the time, especially if you're like in the lockdown together, it's like important to give yourself some alone time to recharge and relax.
Yeah. We talk so much about the importance of alone time to recharge. And I feel like it's, you know, just as important, and if not more important, in like a relationship kind of setting versus just your friends, you know, or from work or whatever. Like me time is good for everybody, you know, how often you do it, you know, what you do during that time is definitely different person to person, but there's definitely huge benefit in taking some time for yourself, 100%. And I think one of the things I always think about is when you do take that time for yourself and recharge, then you're able to show up in your relationship or in your friendships or at work the best version of yourself because you took that time to care for yourself and disconnect and just, you know, be yourself by yourself. So it might sound counterintuitive that you need to take time away to come back like better than ever, but that seems to be how it works for me.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, with literally every single part of your relationship, have an open discussion about it. So have a discussion about boundaries where it's like, I need, 2 hours a week where I don't see you or whatever it is, and have a discussion about, well, if I'm away on my own time, can you still call me? Because some people are like, heck yeah, call me whenever. Some people are like, no, I need a break. And then if you don't have that communication, you're calling, they're not picking up, drama happens.
Yeah.
Like, have these boundaries and expectations kind of set, because you don't want to be the person who, like, say you're me and you're in a yoga class and you hear like the buzzing on your wrist as your significant other's texting you and sending you memes and trying to FaceTime you. Like, it's just going to make you like resentful, and they probably are just doing it because they think that that's cute and what you want, So have, boundaries kind of set. And it's okay that like boundaries shift, obviously, like people change and whatever, but I think it's just important to have the expectations set outright, because different people have different levels also. Like, there are probably some people who are like, I want to spend 23 hours a day with you because I love you so much, and other people are like, I love you the same amount, but I need to spend like 10 hours with you and that's it. So that's normal.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's also respecting their boundaries as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really easy to be like, this is what I want and this is how I operate. But obviously, when you're in a relationship, you're not the only one in that relationship, and you need to be respectful of your partner's boundaries and how much alone time they need, or whatnot. You can't just expect them to obey like what you want. So I think that's just another thing to be extremely mindful of, to have like a super strong and healthy relationship.
Definitely.
I think part of this too is having trust and being confident in your relationship. Like, I feel like in some cases of my friends or people I've heard about that spend so much time with their partner, it's because one of them is insecure in the relationship, where they feel like if they're not together, they can't trust what the person is doing like in the time apart, or they're just not confident in their relationship or in themselves. So they just think, bad things are happening when they're apart. So I think your whole point on communicating your boundaries and whatever, kind of, we can just like round that up to like have super open communication to build trust and confidence in a relationship. Like, you want to know where you want your partner to know where you stand at all times. You want to know where they stand, and just make sure you're reducing that like miscommunication or like internalizing feelings and thoughts that just kind of spiral into a whole bunch of unnecessary drama.
Yeah, exactly. I think that having the kind of open and frank communication is what builds the like comfort with each other. Like, if your significant other is going out, even if it's like a situation where you think like, oh my God, he could meet a girl there. Like, if he's going out to the bar, or like if she's going out clubbing or whatever, if you have the trust there, like, you're not worried about it, because you just, like, you've already talked about it. You have clear expectations. Like, you can go into as much detail as like, what's allowed at the club? Like, let's talk about this, so that it's not like anyone feels guilty, and not like you're trying to hide things or whatever. Like, just have these conversations, even though it's like weird and cringy when you're just like talking about it out of context. Like, what can I do at the club? But I think that it's like super important.
I feel like I need to have that chat with myself.
Yeah.
Girl, what can you do at the club?
What's allowed?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to your earlier point too, Tag, of being honest in those conversations. Like, you don't want to just tell your partner like, honestly, I'm good with whatever, when it's actually killing you inside, and you hope, he's not doing this at the club or whatever. I love how we're saying at the club.
This is a common scenario. He goes to the club. You're at home alone.
And we are in a Destiny's Child song right now. So funny, but I think, it's just being honest, because if you're not being honest, then you're just setting yourself up to fail. You're setting yourself up for, to be, I guess, kind of disappointed. I know that sounds like extremely dramatic, but you need to be honest with them. And the more you're honest with them, it also allows them to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is that I feel like so many people's like kind of standards are different for what is acceptable in a relationship. So that's why like you have to have these conversations, because for some people, obviously, like we've been saying this whole time, people need to have their own separate lives. Like I think if you're coming from a place that's like, my boyfriend can't talk to any other girls and can't have a girl's phone number in his phone, like that's insane. And I think that's coming from a place of insecurity. But if it's like, I don't want him to buy girls drinks at the club, then it's like, okay, that's fair. That could be considered weird. Or, I don't want him to like DM girls on Instagram and say that they look cute. Like, okay, fair enough. Yeah. But you need to verbalize what you want.
Yeah, 100%. And what you want out of this relationship or what your partner wants, it might be and probably is different from your last relationship. So I feel like it's important to have this conversation with every partner that you have, if you're going from one relationship to another, or if you're somebody who's just in a relationship for the first time. Like I feel this will be a conversation I have with my future partner where I'm like, okay, this is my first like actual relationship. So I probably have extremely different opinions or standards than my partner does, who's maybe been in like 3 relationships in their life. You know what I mean? So I think every relationship is different. Every person is different, and you need to kind of treat it as such.
Yeah, especially like don't bring baggage from previous relationships into a new one. Yeah. Like just because you dated someone who cheated on you does not mean that all men are cheaters. Yeah. So you have to assume that your guy's like sketch. Yeah. Like every person is different. Like,
That's obviously easier said than done, I feel. But I think this whole, like, we obviously are all about, like, self-discovery and, like, all of that on our Golden 20s podcast. But I really think that applies to this, too, is, like, why do you feel that way? Is it because of something this partner has done that made you feel that way? Or is it from your past relationships and it's just baggage you're bringing into this relationship? Like, having the self-awareness to know why you're feeling a certain way, I think, is amazing and definitely something, hopefully, by taking alone time and like being your own independent person, hopefully it empowers you to have this self-awareness and show up to be a really great partner for your partner.
Yeah, because it's one thing to be like, oh, I feel this way because I'm insecure in the relationship, but then it's like, go deeper. Why are you insecure? Yeah. And then once you kind of address those reasons, that's how you can kind of like heal from that and go forward with like a healthy relationship.
And I think it's so common for people to project those insecurities on people. So it's like a lot of kind of like reacting, I guess, when, your partner tells you something that maybe doesn't sit right with you. It's just kind of you lash out due to insecurity or whatever reason. But I think the more you do that, the more you kind of indicate to your partner you're not so open for communication and you're not, you don't want their honesty because it's not what you want to hear. So I think that's another thing is you want to make sure you're making your partner feel comfortable telling you things, especially since trust and honesty are such huge, and communication, they're such huge factors that contribute to a healthy relationship. So just being mindful of that when they do tell you something that you are insecure about or something you don't maybe agree with or something like that, like try to take an approach where you can chat it out maturely. Maybe this is like the mom talk coming out of me now, but talk it through without scaring them away and making them shut down.
Yeah, and trust is a two-way street. Like,
Totally.
you should be open and honest, and if you want your partner to trust you, don't do things that are untrustworthy. Like, probably 99% of the time, if you're doing something and hiding it from your partner, it's because if it's a healthy relationship, you are feeling like you're doing something that probably isn't the best. And so, and trust is kind of earned. And when you lose it, it's hard to kind of get it back. So, it's important from both sides. Like, it's easy to be like, my boy can't be buying girls drinks in the club, but like, maybe you can't be sliding into people's DMs on Insta, or, whatever it is. It's a two-way
Or maybe
street.
you can't be drinking. Yeah, or if the example in the club is that guys can't buy other girls drinks, then you as a girl shouldn't be able to drink drinks that other guys buy you. You know what I mean? Like, it has the exact same implication that, this guy's trying to, like, I don't know, I guess, like, impress or get with this girl because he's buying her drinks. It's the same on the opposite side where this girl's accepting drinks if you're a decent human being because, he has a shot in, like, whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's such a great point.
Yeah. Well, that is where we are going to leave it this week with our long-winded life chats about dating and relationships.
Going to the club?
Yeah, a lot about the club. So thank you so much for listening. We put out a new episode every single Tuesday. So if you like this episode, make sure you are following us and subscribe so that you see when our new episodes drop. In the meantime, you can follow us on social media at Our Golden 20s. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Facebook, Spotify. We also have a Patreon page, which is your best way to show support for the podcast. So we drop episodes early there and put out some additional content. So that is everything this week. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next Tuesday.